We've got a great show lined up for you here on Retiring Well. Going to be talking about the election. Does that really impact your overall portfolio? What does history show us? Along with that, retirement. Is it like a sprint or is it more of a marathon? So when you think about that, how are you approaching your retirement plan? And then 10 steps to maximize your IRA. That's probably your largest retirement asset. So how do you maximize that? And then lastly, unclaimed retirement benefits. Is there money waiting out there for you that you aren't aware of? So all this and much more coming up right here, right now on Retiring Well.
Retiring Well, brought to you by Centennial Wealth Advisory, financial advisors specializing in retirement planning and serving all of Northern Michigan. Retiring Well, helping you plan for a successful and comfortable retirement. Retiring Well, plan to retire well.
We hear all the time how this election's different. It's more contentious as ever, it's leading to more increased volatility. Well, if you start to think back in American history, remember there was a time in the 1800s where candidates would duel with pistols. So we have to start to think about, is this necessarily true? And if it is, how is this going to impact our overall investment portfolio? I think it's important that we start to take a step back and we look at the overall investments and we start to think about, every year there was a time in there where there's a reason not to be invested. If we think back in recent history, we had COVID semi-recently, we had, the tariff wars with China, European debt crisis, 2008, and the list can continue to go on. There's always a reason why we shouldn't be invested. What's important is to really focus on the trends of the market over time. Despite all these different headwinds we experience throughout time, the market continues to go up. And we start to think about the current volatility in the investment portfolio and in the investment markets, we start to lose sight of where we're at. The markets are at a much different dollar value than they were 5-10 years ago. The overall volatility hasn't really changed that much. Going back to 2009, the average number of days of a 1% more swing is 66. So far in 2024, we've only had into the mid-20s. Now that could just mean we're in for a really exciting other half of the year, or it could mean that what we're experiencing is pretty normal. Again, the dollar amount swings are pretty different because we're at such higher values, but when we look at the actual percentage changes, it's not out of the ordinary for what we're experiencing right now in the market. But as you start to look at the election, does it really matter who wins? Well, from an investment standpoint, not really. Of course, there's going to be different fiscal policies, different agendas thrown out there. But when you look at whether you're Democrat and Republican, there's periods where the market's doing really well. There's also periods where we have these pullbacks, corrections, or crashes thrown in there. But over time, again, look at the trend. The market continues to go higher despite who's being in office and despite who wins the election. So you want to start to zoom out and think about the long-term investment. Remember, retirement isn't just planning for tomorrow, it's planning for maybe the next 5, 10, 20 years down the road. When you start to look at just the probability, flip a coin if the markets can go up tomorrow. You're not going to have much better odds as far as, it's about 50%. However, if you start to zoom out and look at the long term, well, the next 10 years, there's a 97% probability that the market's going to be in a higher position. It's pretty good odds that we should start to stay invested. But if you are thinking, well, if a Democrat wins, I'm just going to go to cash. If a Republican wins, I'm just going to go to cash. Well, start to look at how that can impact your investment portfolio. So if we go back to 1960, if you had $10,000 and you only invested if a Republican was in office, you'd have a little over $100,000 today. Now, if you look at that same time period and you're only investing when you had a Democrat in office, you'd have a little bit more, you'd have about $500,000. Both really good returns. This isn't to say we should have a Democrat from market standpoint, because look what happens if you stay invested during that whole period of time. If you had $10,000 invested for that whole time, regardless of who wins the election, you'd have over $5 million as far as the future value number. That's a pretty big impact to your overall investment portfolio. Now, that certainly doesn't mean we shouldn't be thinking about, well, what can we do in advance to prepare for the election? As we've seen here recently, market volatility's picked up a little bit. Again, not out of the ordinary. But the best approach is going to be going back to diversification. This isn't just diversification by stocks and bonds. Again, depending on the agendas of the different elected officials, we could see changes in tax rates. So how do we leverage and be diversified from a tax standpoint? If we could see rates change, maybe now is the time to start to dequalify some of our pre-tax assets and move into some sort of life insurance strategy, or maybe reconsider doing Roth conversions. You also want to start to be diversified by our investment managers. Maybe having just a passive approach isn't the right answer. Maybe we need to have more active management inside of our investment portfolio to make proactive changes to different asset classes. And then lastly, again, politicians are going to have different agendas. That's going to affect companies differently. It's going to affect different sectors and different asset classes. So you want to be diversified by all these different asset classes, so no matter who wins the election, you're not left behind. Of course, it always comes back to your overall retirement plan, your risk tolerance, and starting to align all those different vehicles together. But from a big picture, what's coming up in November from our investment standpoint really isn't going to matter over the long term. What is going to matter is being diversified, staying invested, and aligning your investment portfolio with your risk tolerance so that you don't miss those nice up days in the market and lose out on using that volatility to your advantage.
Every success story starts with a plan. If you are nearing retirement or already retired, we invite you to an informative live event to help you plan to retire well. Our presentation will address pressing questions such as, how will the presidential election impact my investments? What can I do to protect against inflation in retirement? Am I tax diversified? How can I maximize my Social Security benefits? Will my assets be properly protected when I pass away? And much more. Call 888-608-5825 or register online and choose the date and location that works best for you. The live event starts at 6:30 p.m. and is free to attend with a complimentary gourmet dinner to follow. But seating is limited and tends to fill quickly. Call 888-608-5825 or register online to reserve your seats today. Don't miss this important live event to help you plan to retire well.
Today we're going to discuss the retirement journey and whether or not it should be viewed more as a sprint or a marathon. And this is going to ring true for those who are preparing for retirement, but also for those who are already in retirement. So much time is spent daydreaming about that retirement journey and that first day when you actually wake up and don't have to go to work. It's a great thing to think about and prepare for and prepare well for. However, that journey is one that we need to put time into preparing and planning for. Philip C. McGraw, better known as Dr. Phil, once said, "Life is a marathon, not a sprint." So what does that actually mean, and how does that relate to your retirement journey? Obviously a sprint is a short race, a short distance. One of the most common distances or most popular distances really with sprinting is the 100-meter dash. So not a very far race. Most people could probably walk or jog 100 meters. Whereas a marathon is 26.2 miles, or if you really want it broken down into meters for you, it's 42,195 meters. So a lot more than a 100-meter dash. So when you're thinking about the retirement journey and trying to relate that or compare that to the analogy of a marathon, just like with a marathon, it can take months and for some people even years to train and prepare their body for a marathon. I've actually personally ran a lot of marathons, including I've ran the Boston Marathon a couple of times. And for Boston, you have to qualify based on a time. So they look at your age and they tell you what time you have to be under to even qualify for the Boston Marathon. So that takes a lot of planning and training that goes into that to prepare your body to physically do that. It's not just your running regimen and training plan in that regard, but your diet and your sleep schedule. So it's very involved. And to get the most out of your retirement years, you need to view that journey, that planning, more like a marathon than a sprint. And like I said, just like you're training for a race or a big marathon, it takes dedication and planning, so will your planning and preparation for retirement. A lot of families spend a lot of time planning for their vacation every summer. If they have, let's say they're taking a 2-week vacation, they might spend 20 hours that year planning for that vacation, determining where they want to go, where are they going to stay, whether, hotel, Airbnb, how are they going to get there? Are they driving? Are they flying? Planning their meals for their vacation. planning what activities they're going to do once they're there. So it's a lot of time, energy, and effort that goes into that, say, 2-week vacation for their annual family getaway. And if you look at it, your retirement, let's say you're retired for 30 years, that's really more or less a 1,560 week long vacation. The reality is many people spend more time planning their annual family vacation than they do preparing for their retirement. But however, most people would agree that preparing for their retirement is important to them. So why don't people spend more time planning well for their retirement? For some, it's overwhelming, and they don't even know where to start. Just like, for example, if someone who hadn't really ran much or had never ran over a couple of miles, then decided they wanted to run a marathon, where would they start? How do they even begin that journey? And that's why it can be beneficial to sit down with someone like myself or another financial advisor here at Centennial Wealth Advisory to be able to help you plan to retire well. We have helped thousands of clients navigate the journey toward and in retirement. We've seen common mistakes, things that were overlooked that we're able to help them with. It's similar to a coach who's working with an athlete, right? If a coach has worked with thousands of athletes, they have seen the journey play out in their lives, in their training. They've seen mistakes that have been made, and it's no different with us working with our clients. We're able to help you plan to retire well because of all the people who've come before you that we've seen and helped as well. Reviewing your investments accounts is a big piece of this puzzle, but we also need to look at other areas, your healthcare needs, your estate planning needs, taxes. So with healthcare, when was the last time you had that reviewed? Are you sure you have the appropriate coverage for yourself? With estate planning, what happens when something happens to you? Where is your family going to be? How is that going to work for them? Have you reviewed that recently? Taxes, we want to make sure you're not paying too much in taxes as well. We would like to sit down with you and help you review these items and help you plan to retire well.
So the Father Fred Foundation has been around for 35 years, meeting the essential needs of people in our community with basics like food, clothing, and financial assistance to help keep utilities on, or rent, or things like that. Today we're doing something very special that has really grown over the past few years, called the Back to School Shoe Program. We're making sure that kids are ready to return to school this fall with brand new shoes and socks, school supplies, backpacks, and we are even doing vision screenings and ordering prescription glasses for those kids who need them. This is so much more than partnerships and new shoes, but it's also kids showing up to school ready to learn with confidence, being able to see the instruction, and really feeling good about themselves and having a nice solid pair of shoes on their feet. We received lots of grants this year from multiple different partners just to cover some of our costs. Just wanted to mention Golden Shoes and our partnership with New Balance really makes these shoes go a long way for each kiddo in the region. And of course our volunteers, we couldn't do this work without our volunteers. That's the labor behind all of this. We have these great ideas, and then we have just wonderful volunteers that actually executes it and works one-on-one with families. So we serve the 5-county region. We just started doing the 5-county region in about the last 3 or 4 years. Prior to that, we were doing Grand Traverse County because that's kind of the big hub. But what we recognized is some of those outer counties, those people just can't make it to us. We're a 45-minute drive, and with the cost of gas, things like that. So we decided to take it on the road. We've been doing that for 4 years now. Prior to that, they were doing it about 15 or 20 years, where they were doing it right here on site. So last week we hit all of those outer counties. We took our truck, we loaded it, we set up shop for the day, we started it over the very next day, and this week it's all in Grand Traverse County, serving of course more people because more people live here, and it's just it's a pretty great event. These families are so grateful.
We come up every year to join with Father Fred during their back to school drive. We absolutely love this partnership, what Father Fred does, the hours that they spend putting this event together to be able to provide shoes to the community and back to school book bags and supplies is amazing, and we add to that by being able to come up and screen the children for their vision, and if these children fail, we're able to see them on clinic. We have a doctor, we have the optician, and we're able to do a full eye exam, let the children pick out their glasses, and then we ship them their glasses within 2 to 3 weeks after their exam is done. So they get the whole process during this one event, and they don't have to go anywhere else. If they have any problems, we definitely refer them out to another eye doctor to make sure that that's continued to be followed up with. It is truly an event that I am very passionate about, and the people that are working so hard to keep this event going and growing really put their blood, sweat, and tears into it.
A couple of our partner organizations have really just stepped up and done so much. Not only do our partners do fundraising for us or collect items for us, but we've got a great partnership with Centennial Wealth. They've done so much for us in the past. Last year they joined forces with us and served each one of those kiddos. This year they're back. And I'm telling you what, their sleeves are rolled up, they're on their knees, they're helping every kid that needs a new pair of shoes. I want to always mention the community, because without the community support, we're a private nonprofit organization that truly is grassroots. We don't receive government funding of any sort. So, I just ask that the community continues to think about us when they're looking for places to support.
The IRA, it's a great way to save for retirement. Even if you already have a 401k or a 403b, for an example, if you have the extra funds available to invest, I would highly encourage you to think about opening an IRA. So let's talk about 10 different steps to maximize that IRA. Number one, maximize the tax deduction. So contribute as much as you can to that IRA on an annual basis. For 2024, the max that you can contribute to that IRA is $7,000. Number two, make catch-up contributions. So if you're age 50 or older, well, guess what? You get a little catch-up where you can contribute a little extra to that IRA at $1,000. So your max 2024 IRA contribution, if you're over the age of 50, is $8,000. Number three, meet the contribution deadline. This one, you don't want to miss that, right? You don't want to give up the ability to contribute to that IRA for that given year. So don't miss that deadline. The deadline to file or to contribute is when you file your taxes. So it's April 15th, or if the April 15th falls on the weekend, it'll be, the day or two after that. So don't miss that deadline. Number four, contribute in each spouse's name. So maybe you have a household situation where one spouse is working and the other spouse is staying at home taking care of the kids. Well, don't think you can't contribute for that stay-at-home spouse. You can still do that. And that's the same limits apply. So $7,000 unless you're over the age of 50, and then you can do the $8,000. Number five, claim the saver's credit. This one is often overlooked in that if you do contribute to an IRA and your income isn't too high, you get a little tax deduction. So for a single filer, that is $1,000, and then for a married filer, or for a married couple, it's $2,000. Now, the income limits to be able to qualify for that tax credit is $38,250 for a single filer, and then for a married couple, it's $76,500. So if your income is above those figures, well, then you don't qualify for that tax credit. Number six, directly deposit your tax refund into that IRA. It's money you never really had in your pocket anyway, so why not stash it away for your future in the IRA? Number seven, make sure you qualify to make IRA contributions. This is a good one because if you don't have earned income, well, guess what? You can't contribute to that IRA. So often I have clients who are retired and maybe they sell a property or they inherit some money and they want to make a contribution to their IRA because they've got that extra funds. Well, if they aren't working, they don't have that earned income, they can't make those contributions to the IRA. Number 8, minimize fees. So do you know how much in fees you're paying within your IRA? Have you looked at, are there trading costs associated with every time you move money around? Do the different investments that you have, maybe mutual funds or ETFs, what are the expense ratios with all those different investments within the IRA? If you haven't looked at that, or you haven't looked at it in a while, take a look at it, because that eats away at the growth and your retirement income down the road. Number 9, consider a Roth IRA. These are very, very powerful in my mind, my favorite retirement account, if you will. We know that America is what, $35 trillion in debt at this point in time. How are we going to recoup that? Well, tax rates are probably going to go up from here, right? So if you got that money into a after-tax investment account like the Roth, and then 10, 15, 20 years down the road goes by, when you actually take money out, potentially tax rates are going to be higher, and you won't have to worry about it if you put your money into that Roth IRA. And then finally, number 10, minimize taxes on those distributions from the IRA. So this one really only applies for those required minimum distributions. That's going to be at either age 73 or up to age 75, depending on your birth year. But if you don't take money out of your IRA at that point in time, well, guess what? You're going to be subject to a penalty. That penalty can be up to 25%. So you don't want to miss out on taking that required minimum distribution, even if you don't want that money. So there's 10 different steps to maximize the IRA. Again, if you don't have an IRA, you just have that 401k, take a look at getting an IRA and helping to plan to retire well.
If you're retired or approaching retirement in the next 5 to 10 years, join us for an informative live event. This event is all about you, the challenges you face, and the information you need to help you build the future that you want. There's no pressure to become a client. Our goal is to simply give you valuable information that you can use to make smarter financial decisions. We hope that by the time you leave this event, you'll be one step closer to your retirement goals.
If you like watching Retiring Well, make sure to go to youtube.com/retiringwell and click the subscribe button to never miss any of our TV shows and other informative videos.
Hey, welcome to this segment on unclaimed retirement benefits. First thing I'd like to explain is what is an unclaimed retirement benefit. That could be an old 401k, that could be an old pension that you've earned over your lifetime but either forgot about or life happened and maybe your beneficiaries didn't even know that you had earned that. I want to put up a screen here of some pretty shocking statistics. The average worker in America right now will have 12.7 jobs over their lifetime. It's interesting that half of those jobs are earned between ages 18 and 24. But in May of 2023, there was 29.2 million lost retirement accounts. They had total assets in those accounts of 1.65 trillion. There were 72,000 eligible Americans for pensions that are currently not gathering those payments. Pretty shocking, I think, and you say, how could that happen? Well, let me just give you an example of my wife and I. My wife and I were both teachers. I taught high school math, personal finance, calculus, algebra 2 for 17 years. My wife taught special ed for 16 years. And through those years of service, we earned pensions, and we also opened up some 403Bs and 457s. Now, since we've retired, our pension equation is such that you can't actually get our pension, we can't start our personal pensions here until we get to the age 60. And so that means we might have 20 years of life happening before we can ever turn those on. And if you're not organized or you don't let your beneficiaries know what you've earned, you could see how easily those might get lost or forgotten about. When I explain to my wife our financial situation and try to teach her some things, she'll look at the income plan or all the different planning resources that we have here at Centennial, and she'll just be like, okay, that's enough. I'm not really interested. Are we going to be able to retire? I hope so, yeah. But what goes into that retirement plan are these accounts. And you can see how easily they could either be lost or forgotten, or life happens and you want to know what to do and how to claim them. Okay, so here's some strategies. The first thing is that contact your old employer. Okay, get to the HR and just say, hey, do we have any kind of statements, pay stubs, old literature on these accounts, whether it's a 403B or a 457 or a 401k, and just see if you can get a contact number that you can then reach out and then see what kind of benefits might still be lost there. The next thing is that you can just have your own documents. We have clients come in all the time, and they'll have a box of stuff, and they'll just be like, okay, here's my stuff, but I need to find some of these old things. I don't know where to look, and even if I found it, I'm not even sure what I'm looking at, and then I wouldn't know what to do afterwards. And so we say, okay, no problem. Let's just start looking through all those old statements and trying to go down memory lane there of what employment did you have, and what might you have earned, but as just sitting there, because in the transition of jobs, there's a lot that's going on. Life can happen fast, and these are those things that can be forgotten about. Now, there's some really helpful online tools. And so if you're sitting there wondering, I wonder if I have an old pension, or I wonder if, my old 401k or 403b, how can I might find that? If you look at this graphic here on the screen, you'll notice there's two really helpful websites to give you a start. There's many out there, but the National Registry of Unclaimed Retirement Benefits and the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation are two websites that you might start that search. Okay, it's a national registry that will have that information that you might be able to uncover some old assets that you didn't even know you had, or maybe you're of age now and you can turn on those benefits. Similar to my pension. Once I get 60, if I'm still kicking, I'm going to be turning that on, because that's going to be my best option forward. What happens if your company went out of business? Okay, well, this is where those statements and contacting your employer and contacting the new company that might have bought it could be very helpful. And then finally, work with a financial advisor. We do this stuff all the time. We know the questions to ask, and we know what we're looking at when we look at those statements. So if you have a trusted financial advisor, I would highly suggest put it on their lap, work together as a team to try to uncover these hard-earned benefits. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that added value to your life.